Hey everyone, welcome to Think Tomorrow. I am Kyle Wolf and I'm here with Julie Hall. She is running for the 4th congressional seat, basically replacing Representative Joe Kennedy, who is stepping down from that seat. And a little bit about Julie, most importantly, and more importantly, at least in my life, and I think a lot of our viewers, she was in the Air Force for 30 years. And that's something you can't really take back, right? That's something I just want to start off with. I really respect that a lot. And she retired as a colonel. Basically, since '78, she was in the military, the U.S. military. And I'd love for her to, I guess, introduce herself and welcome, Julie.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for having me on. This is a wonderful opportunity for me, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. But yeah, Julie, the floor is yours right now. I'd like to just leave this open to you, and however you want to take it for this question, as far as just tell us about yourself, right? And I'm interested to see about your personal life and maybe how you decided to get into politics and why you're running for this seat.
Okay, so, as you mentioned, I was in the military for 30 years. One of the things is when I went in was 1978, and at that time, which I think is a pretty interesting story, very few women went into the military. So,
Hmm.
yeah, very few women went to the military at that time. And the kind of the story was that if you did go into the military, you were going into the military to meet your husband. So women that came in didn't stay for very long. I was looking for a career, and people ask me all the time, why did you go into the military? And one of the reasons, there's actually a couple of them, and this goes back to telling some of the folks here a little bit about myself. I came from a family of 7 brothers and sisters, and we struggled. Our parents were very middle class. So I ended up paying my own way to Massasoit Community College, one of the best schools I ever went to. And I've gone to some pretty decent colleges and universities, but Massasoit Community College, I'm a huge fan of community college. So so that's the way this started. And so I decided that I wanted to finish my degree after Massasoit Community College. So I went in the military. That's how it started. But I also had a feeling from what I knew about the military that that would be the best place for me to get an equal shake in terms of being a female. That was a big thing to me. Ever since I was very young, I always had that feeling that I always wanted to be able to take care of myself. I always wanted to care for myself. I didn't want to have to, feel as though I had to rely on somebody else. And like I said, I felt that from an early age. So this was the place that I felt that I could get an equal footing. And for the most part, in terms of rank, that's the thing. If you have a certain rank, you're going to be paid that amount of money. The difficulty that comes in with the military is how you get that rank. And that's where some of the challenges for women come about, because people ask me that too. Did you really feel that it was fair and so forth? So I do a lot of speaking on that in terms of how I felt about being in the military and women going to war and so forth and all those things. So but that's sort of my career. I started off as a behavioral health specialist. So I did a lot of work with post-Vietnam veterans that started to come in the late 70s. You started to see some of them, start to come back into the hospital, and they were having a lot of difficulties. Very, very difficult for them. I mean, you would be talking to them, and all of a sudden they'd go into exactly what people talk about, that 1,000-mile stare. A little bit scary, but I enjoyed that, believe it or not. I enjoyed working with folks in behavioral health. So that was nice. I did that for 6.5 years. So I was enlisted when I first came in for 6.5 years. And then I went on to University of Maryland. I got my degree and became an officer. Now, when I became an officer, I became a hospital administrator, which was a great job, the best job in the Air Force. I'll say that everybody in the Air Force says that their job is the best job in the Air Force, but mine truly was a wonderful job. And I had the opportunity of actually operationally running large medical centers, large healthcare network systems. I've often had a hospital and then two or three satellite clinics under my, my purview, if you would. So I learned a lot. If you look at it from logistics, personnel, everything you could possibly think of to run a hospital basically came on under my span of control. So it was a difficult job. I feel as though I worked 24 hours a day, and I did. There was sometimes when I went in late at night, and something happened. You'd had to go in there, like if an alarm went off or something like that. You had to go in and take care of it. And during that time, I also raised my nephew, who is now legally my son, and I raised him as my own son and a single parent while I was in the military. I've had command twice. So twice I've been a commander, which is also a very, very rewarding position because you get the opportunity to hopefully shape other people's lives. And in the military, the thing that is most valuable to me when it comes to why I'm in this business, why I am in this arena, if you would, I felt as though I worked with people of all different sexes, all different sexual orientation, all different colors, all different races, all different religions, and we somehow seem to get along fine despite that. So that's one of the things that I bring to the table. I have seen how when you work together and you reach across the table, a lot of those prejudices, stereotypes, they go away. You have to work as a team. You have to trust each other. You can't have those things in the way. So that's been very, very good. And I can tell you, when those, men and women put on that uniform, they're out there and they're doing the best job that they can. It's amazing. It's amazing some of the things that they can do. And it was a great experience for me to be able to lead them. I learned a lot from them. I wasn't always the person, leading. Sometimes they led me. And that's the way it works, both sides. So that was a really good experience. The other good experience that I bring being in the military is I got to see a lot of different ways of life, how people lived, and the freedoms in particular that the people in some of these countries don't have that we have. We have so much freedom and we take it for granted. And I know that sounds a little cliche. People say, oh, people always say that, but it's absolutely true. When you see that there's, I'm going to take it because, from women, because that's probably where I've witnessed it the most. There are women throughout the world that are considered to be property still today, which is pretty surprising and disgusting in my view. But, that's the way these countries are in some of the places. So I've seen that happen. It's very disturbing for an American woman to go over to some of these countries where they, can't show their face and those kinds of things because, it's offensive to that country. But so those are the kinds of things that I think I bring to the table. I've been to the borders, almost every border. That's another thing. I was in El Paso, Texas. So I have a lot of experience and knowledge of what goes on at that border. I firsthand, I saw how it does impact on the healthcare system. I also was on the border of the DMZ, which, as I don't know if everybody knows that, but that's the line that was drawn between North and South Korea. That is a very interesting place to be. You have American soldiers on one side and Korean soldiers, North Korean soldiers on the other side. 18-year-old kids, if you would, carrying guns and just staring each other down, pretty much. It's a pretty scary place to be. But we still have people out there doing that. They're still there. Very interesting. And, of course, the Canadian border, there's still a lot that goes on. I don't know if people realize this, but that's also a place where some of when they talk about, selling women, that's where a lot of that happens too, as over the Canadian border and going from Canada over to other countries. So, as I said, I've had a lot of experience with borders, and so I have some particular feelings about that. And that's not because I'm a Republican, that's because I have particular feelings about that. So that's pretty much, I'm kind of wrapped. I mean, I could go, I've been around to many, many different, every state in the United States. I had an assignment once when I was on a medical aircraft. I used to do all the operational logistics for the medical aircraft. I don't know if you probably don't remember, but there was a time when we had these big C9s and they had big red crosses. So that was aeromedical evacuation, an
Sorry to
awesome
cut
assignment.
you off there. Could you go back probably 15 seconds? It cut out completely. I didn't get any
Oh,
audio
no.
from, I don't know if you remember, but
Okay,
please.
that sounds good.
Thank
But
you.
I don't know. Oh, yep, sure. I don't know if you remember because they don't fly them anymore, but we used to have a whole fleet of DC-9s that had little red crosses on them, actually big red crosses, white planes with big red crosses. And these were medical evacuation aircraft. And we went all over the world picking up patients. And it was quite a system that we had going, quite a system. So that was a very, very interesting experience for me. That was kind of the first experience that I had with what they call operational experience, being with the aircraft, being with the pilots. Normally, I worked in a hospital or a clinic, and this was what's called a special duty assignment. And I had the opportunity to do that. And again, just the experiences that I've had and the things I've learned. It was at that point, actually, I learned how government, some of the things that went on in the government worked. We used to get phone calls from senators. We used to get phone calls from DC sometimes asking us to send an airplane out for somebody in particular. Or if there was something getting ready to go down, like there was going to be some kind of skirmish somewhere, we got a heads up about it because whenever there's a skirmish somewhere, they want to make sure that there's medical care right by. And again, it's kind of an interesting concept because you're sending people out there, that they're going to get hurt, and then you have to have a medical plane behind there to get them. So it's a funny environment. I don't mean funny in a laughing way. It's an interesting environment where you make a calculation on how many people are going to either break legs or do something like that when they jump out of an airplane. And so all of this was amazing to me. I call it sort of the strategy of war, if you would, that there's actually data and statistics and models that run these things. I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty crazy. So that gave me a great sense of our security too, in terms of our foreign security, our policies on security. Very, very interesting. I became very good at looking around different parts of the country and out into the world, kind of keeping an eye on different things that were happening in the world and being able to project, if you would, where the next skirmish was going to happen. And I call them skirmishes because there's all different levels of things that happen. There could be little things that go, and then big things. And now we're down to the point where it's usually something small. But you have to remember, despite what we see on the media, there is all kinds of things that are still going on behind the scenes that you don't really know about. And I think that's the part that I have had vision to, that brings a little bit of knowledge, extra knowledge that other people maybe don't have. So that's like I said, that's quite an experience too. It's a little scary too, to be quite honest with you, to kind of figure out like how this all works out and how these deals are made. And I got to the point where I was saying, do they plan these things like ahead of time? Because that something would happen, or was going to happen, something was changing. For instance, I'll give you an example. When I went to Texas, they started painting the airplanes brown. And I thought, painting the airplanes brown. They got that light kind of brown color. A year later, we went to war in the desert. And I kind of thought back and I said, are you kidding me, really? Do we know that far ahead of time that we're going to go to war with somebody? So interesting, very, very interesting environment. But, and I think, like I said, it gave me an opportunity to look behind the scenes and see what kinds of things really happen in our government, if you would, our foreign policies, how they're done, what are the results of some of the things. So, but that in a nutshell sort of goes back to talk about my career and my family and so forth. I consider myself to be a very middle class person, and I consider myself to be just an ordinary person. I know people say, "Oh, you're not an ordinary person. You've gone to the military, and that's quite a feat." And it is a feat to go from an enlisted person, what they call a no striper, at the very bottom of the rank,
Hmm.
up to colonel for
Right.
anybody, and in particular for a female. It's tough. And the funny thing is, I see some of the veterans, the older veterans, and when they meet me, they tease me because they say, I would have given you hell. I would have given you a lot of crap as a
Yeah.
female.
Right.
And they realized that I was able to overcome those kinds of things and make it to the rank, excuse me, make it to the rank that I am. And so in their own little way, they're very respectful, and they tell other people, they
Hmm.
tell them this was hard.
Yeah. So, really love the bio. I'd like to talk about healthcare as a whole. I'm just curious to see what your thoughts are on healthcare as a whole and how it could work, right?
Yeah, and I've thought this through quite a bit because there's the big debate about do we go into socialized medicine? You know do we stay the way we are? And this big discussion. And I always go back to this, and I'm going to apologize because I'm going to say the military, but you have to realize 30 years of my life, that's what I did.
Hmm.
Okay, so a lot of my experiences come from that. There will be more I'll talk about after I get out because I've done a lot of things, but while I was in the military, of course, and somebody I was in charge of the money, and I always say, if you are in charge of the money, watch the bouncing dollar sign because that will always bring you to your answers because it's always about money. It always is when it comes
I
down
talk
to
I talk about that every day. I feel like everything always comes down to money and not values, unfortunately. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so I use this analogy that I call the pie theory, the piece of pie, and you'll hear people say it all the time. You have one pie, and that pie has X amount of dollars in it. And you can split that pie in many different ways. And the more you split that pie, for instance, if you take a slice of healthcare and that healthcare isn't so good to begin with, and then you slice it even more, now you got, a piece of a worse piece of the pie, so to say. So, but the thing is, you can only slice it so many ways. So you
Hmm.
have to figure out how to get money. Unless you generate more money to bring into the system, then you're stuck with trying to reallocate resources one side to the other. I mean, it happens everywhere. But
Hmm.
I believe that we already have a socialized medical system, and I'm going to say socialized medical system. It's been called, I did a study when I was when I went to college, and I went to Washington University, and that was a
Hmm.
research school. So I researched universal health care.
Mm.
I don't know if people realize, but this is not the first time it's been talked about. It's been talked about way back in the 1900s. I think it was 144 different bills have been presented
Wow.
about universal health care.
Nobody knows
So
that, or not enough people know that, I should say.
no, it's been presented over and over and over again. So we do have what I consider to be a portion of our population or portion of our healthcare system already is that way, already is socialized medicine. So our
Mm.
Medicare and our Medicaid populations, if you would, are paid for with taxpayer money. So we do have that. To me, an easier way to do things would have been to expand those two programs and allow people to get into those two programs. But the first thing that you have to do is you have to figure out accountability. And if
Hmm.
the programs aren't working properly the way they should be working, you have to fix those problems first. The other thing is that once you get people into certain, I'm going to say certain pods, if you would, managed care is a big deal, and that you have to manage their care properly. When you mix people together, when you take people, say, out of the Medicaid system or the Medicare system, you say, okay, we're going to mix you all into the, rest of the populace, and we're all going to be treated the same way. People that really need extra special care aren't getting that extra special care. So in my mind, they're not getting the best health care. Not only are they not getting the best health care, but they may end up with a provider that isn't really trained to treat them properly. So we're spending more dollars. And then people ask, how come the medical system keeps on spending more money? Well, there you go. That's the reason why.
So one of the things you talked about was your background going to Massasoit Community College. I'm very curious to see how your stance on education as a whole, right? And from pre-K to even college and grad after that. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I definitely am an advocate of community college. And another thing that I am a huge advocate of is trade schools and vocational, VOTEC. I think that, and I have, I went to college, and I went to college, the military paid for my college, which was great. And I think it's okay to definitely have a higher education. That's great to aspire to that. But there's many times where I wish I could fix my own plumbing, or carve something or do something. I mean, to me, people that can do those kinds of things have a certain kind of, their own kind of intelligence, if you would, that I'm going to use the proverbial we as sort of a country or a community, we don't always value that. And
Right.
That's part of the problem. If you don't go to school and you don't get a degree, and we don't value that, and we've got to stop that. We've got to stop that, because we are losing out on some of these. Number one, some of our young people that are graduating from high school are wanting to go into these things, or don't want to go into these things because they feel like it's not going to get them anywhere, so they don't. And then we don't have those skill sets into our economy. And you're going to hear that time and time again, is that there are people that are in the trades that are just dying for interns to come in, and they can't get them. And you know what? Have you ever had like your water heater go out anytime lately? How much it costs to get something like that repaired? Those folks.
Fortunately, I just bought my house a week ago, and they were replaced 2 years ago. So I think I'm good for a while.
You're good, because it's going to be a shock, a sticker shock, when you get the price tag on some of those things. These trades people are making a very decent amount of money, which is really, really wonderful. So people need to think about that. We need folks out there. So it's a great thing to have kids go in there. I'm from Attleboro. At our Attleboro High School, we also have a vocational trade school as part of the high school. And I just think that was the coolest thing ever. I'm a huge advocate of it. And I try to do a lot with that. I actually was sitting on some boards for a little bit of time, and I was a medical advisor to their program, the medical assistant program. So I thought it was great stuff.
That's exciting, and I think what I like about how this has gone so far is that we have like a really solid understanding of like your values and your ideologies, and now let's get to business, right? Let's talk policies. And are there any laws or current laws, or are there any policies you would propose as being a representative for the state of Massachusetts and the U.S. House of Representatives that maybe you would? I mean, I don't know if you're in the stage where you would want to propose a bill, but are there some things you would try to amend with laws or fix? Or I'm just curious on that end, specifically to healthcare and education. Let's go to specifics. Yeah.
One of the things I try to work on is the whole healthcare system in terms of what people get paid. There's plenty of healthcare out there in the world. I think we have plenty of resources, and I'm a perfect example. What did we just see happen here with this pandemic? People were going out of their minds trying to get resources, ventilator here, a bed here, this, that, or whatever. It kind of made me a little bit anxious, because one of the things that should have happened right off the bat was those kinds of things should have been established. Who has beds? What beds are open? Where are all these things? Where are they being kept? One of the things that happened apparently was a lot of the stockpiles were, I guess, taken away. Like I remember I used to exercise with the civilians, with the local economy, with the local people, local medical people, the local fire department, the local police department. Every year we would have an exercise, a huge exercise. We would plan it as if like there was a helicopter crash or something, and everybody was involved. We'd pull out the beds. It gave us a time to go through all our supplies and make sure that anything that was expired was, gotten rid of and then replaced. We also have what you call, to go bags, meaning a lot of stuff that you didn't want to put out into a Connex or something. You had to have them sitting and waiting. We did not have that. We had to scramble around and find those things. And so, me as somebody who's gone through this process, looking at that and watching this kind of roll out, the whole first 3 weeks I kept saying, or 2 weeks, get the military involved, get the get the military involved. And sure enough, they started bringing it into the air guard, and all of a sudden things started happening. How quickly these folks can bring up a transportable hospital, how quickly these folks can bring up what we call a building of opportunity and turn it into a hospital. It's amazing. And so for everybody to have seen that, even though we didn't use it as much as we thought we would have to do, I did like the fact that they went through the whole process and exercise of doing it again, just to show that they could. I hope that we learn from what happened is that we need to continue to do that. You can't just say, okay, fine, we made it through this pandemic and now we don't have to worry about it anymore. I do hope that they learned that we need to continue to have a backup system in place, and that backup system needs to be exercised every year at the minimum, every
Right.
year. So that's just, my opinion on that. But so we did get to see the problem that we have sometimes with healthcare is the redistribution of resources. So kind of got off a little bit. Long story to come back to the redistribution of resources is a huge problem. Where do people go? Where do doctors go? They go to places where they're going to get paid the most amount of money.
And
So
that's what you said earlier. It comes down to money with almost every decision that people make. It's yeah.
There are few people that are altruistic about it, and there are some out there. But somebody they can't afford to be altruistic because they're paying off this huge medical school bill. So
certainly
they have to find a way to do it. So out in places that are in the rural areas, we don't have a lot of medical care. And so people say, well, how come, these people that are out there, when they come into the system, and if you don't have continuous medical care, and I don't care whether it's just a basic primary care, when people come into a system and they haven't had medical care in a long time properly, they're going to overload that system because the needs of those people are going to be so great. So I do believe that there needs to be some kind of minimal, when I say minimal, I don't mean bad, I don't mean minimum, but I mean there needs to be some sort of minimal established health care that everybody gets. So that goes back to sort of, if you want to call it socialized medicine, you can call it what you want, but I believe that there needs to be always some kind of minimal amount. The problem that we have is when we get into discussions, people want to have debates about what they consider minimal. And then we want to have debates about what people deserve. And when we start to talk about what people deserve and who deserves what, that's when we kind of get into difficulties, because those are where the judgment calls comes in. I believe, though, that everybody deserves to have some kind of minimal. Not only does everybody deserve, from a person on the other end of that would have to deal with people that aren't getting a minimal amount of health care, it's a horrible thing on the healthcare system. Like I said, their needs are just so great that that's another way to wipe out your healthcare system. Community hospitals. If you look around the state of Massachusetts, the community hospitals struggle. They struggle for this very reason. They have to take everything that comes into their door. If we have one right out here in Attleboro, and they're the only hospital in the area, and they struggle because they don't get paid enough. They have an exorbitantly high amount of what we call non-pay patients or low-pay patients.
Is that Sturdy Hospital?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's exciting, and that's a great take, right? So, just some closing remarks, and just to wrap everything up. I mean, we really appreciate you, Julie, for coming on the show and everything. And I guess just the one last question I have, just to your message, right? So you're the only Republican that is going for this seat, and there are about, I think, 6 or 7 roughly on the other side, on the Democratic side. Now, I'm curious to see, like, how strategically, how do you plan to do well as a Republican in a normally blue state, right?
Yeah.
And well, luckily we have a Republican, Charlie Baker, right now, but as leverage there. But now, and then number two, just how can we contact you, right? I know you have a Facebook page, but are there other
Sure.
ways people should, like, sign a ballot or get you some
Yes.
publicity? So
Well,
so
thank
so
you.
two things there, yeah.
Yes, there's a couple of things. The first thing, the hurdle, if you would, the challenge for me is to get my name on the ballot. So, that's one thing when I have people call me and they say, hey, would you do an interview? I'm like, hey, listen, I'm not really officially a candidate yet. I'm still trying to get on the ballot. So in order to get on the ballot, I have to have 1,000 signatures from Republicans or unenrolled that, and that's just the way it's done. You can only be Republican unenrolled, because there's a lot of my friends that are Democrats saying, oh my gosh, I want to be able to sign this for you. I said, well, just wait till I make it through, because at the end of it, you can vote for whoever you want. So, but in order to get on the ballot, I need 1,000 signatures. And we're able to sign e-signature now because of what's going on and the healthcare concerns that are going on. It was approved by the Secretary of State that we could do e-signatures. So I do have a page. I'm going to say it slowly, and I apologize. The actual website is called Nomination Papers. So Nomination Papers, and that's one word, .com / Julie Hall, one word, JuliehHall. And if you go on that site, you can e-sign, and I hope that you do. I would love to get on the ballot. I'd like to have the support, but as I said, well, let's see, I'm pretty good right now. I'm very, very close to my target, but we always need more signatures, so I really do appreciate that. If you want to know more about me, I do have a Facebook, and that Facebook it's the @ Julie Hall, all one word, JuliehHall .us, and that will bring you to my Facebook. Now, people say, oh, do you have a big campaign page? No, I don't have a big campaign page. Right now, like I said, I need to get on the ballot. Once I get on the ballot, then I'll bring everything up. I've run for office before. I ran for state rep. I know how to do this. So it's a little bit easier to do this. The one thing I want to get out the message the most is that I consider myself, I'm not an elite politician. I did not come from money. My parents did well, but they worked 2 jobs. Like most of the people out here, I would like to think, most of us that are out here, I mean, I would like to represent that group. That's the group that I want to represent. There is a huge middle class group out here, and I just don't think that their voices are heard. They work hard, they struggle hard, and they need to be heard also, and they need to be taken. Sometimes you look at the folks that have money. If you look at the politicians or the people that we have representing us, a lot of those people came from money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but that's not how I was raised. That's not how I grew up. And I just don't, I think that there's a bigger group of people, nothing against people that have money or their families have money, but
Yeah, you can't control that, right? I mean, you're born with it.
that's my question. So why am I doing this? Because I want to represent middle class. I want to represent those people. I want to represent people that are out there struggling, that are, trying to bring up their kids, trying to go to community college, that have the money where they don't get extra benefits. Yes, there are some people that need to be helped out. I have no problems with that there are some people out there that need to be helped, and we need to have systems to help them. But there's also a big group of people that are just, and the more they fight and the more they struggle and the more money they make, it seems that somebody wants to take that money away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason that I'm running, because I think that when I talk about the pie, that's where that money comes from.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when our decisions are made from a government standpoint, it's the people that are out there working, the working class people. Where's the money going to come from? It's coming from them. It's coming from their
Right.
So that's why I'm here. I want to represent those people. And I worked hard to get to where I am. I don't want people to look at me and say that I don't deserve to have what I worked for. I have a retirement that I earned from the military, but every 2 years I've moved around. My life was disrupted every 2 years. And I did that because I wanted to do that. I believed in what I was doing. It wasn't for the retirement. It wasn't for the healthcare. Yet at the benefits of the day, I have retirement and I have healthcare. And I have to tell you, every year, my healthcare and my retirement is at risk because they're talking about making bigger the socialized medical system. Where do you think money's going to come from? Okay, I mean, so my premiums go up and my copays go up, and I know exactly why they've gone up. And it makes me angry. So these are the kinds of things that I want to represent, and I want to be able to have a voice in.
That's really no, that's exciting, and it's great to just hear your message.
Because what happens is people are working hard. They feel like they're a left out population. So that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe, obviously I went in the military. When I left Massachusetts, I was always so proud to tell everybody, no matter where I went, that I came from Massachusetts. And that this was the place where I felt that freedom started. We fought against tyranny way back in the day. We fought against it for our personal rights, for our personal freedoms. And I believe that personal freedoms and individual rights are so important, and that we have to be very, very careful whenever we start to give one up. So that's another, if you look at, what do I believe in and what do you want to know about me? That is something that I believe in, personal rights. Yes, there are some times when we need to look at the group, but our freedoms are what we fought for.
Absolutely.
And we can't forget that. And it came from this state, and this state seems to be the state that looks at that almost turned around in another direction. So it's a little bit, in a sense, depressing to me about that. So
well, hopefully, you can restore those values, and hopefully, we at Think Tomorrow have the ability to restore those values back to Massachusetts and perhaps even the country. That's our message with Think Tomorrow, and really appreciate you, Julie, coming on and just giving your message to the American people, and I guess specifically the Massachusetts people, right? All right, Julie, thank you so much once again. And for all of our viewers, feel free to follow us on all of our social media platforms. Think Tomorrow, peoplethinktomorrow.com. And, Julie announced basically the way to, reach her and support her. And Julie, can you just remind the viewers again?
Yes, please go in and sign for me, so I will be on the ballot. And again, that's www.nominationpapers.com/JULIEHALL. That's to get me on the ballot. If you want to get in touch with me, anytime. My Facebook is @JULIEHALL.US. And one more thing, very simple. I also have an email, JULIEHALL, one word, .US @gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Julie, once again, and have a great night.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. It was lots of fun.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for participating and watching the show here. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it. We will be there. peoplethinktomorrow.com. Peace.